Hi everyone, and this is Dr.R.Alarmelu Mangai, Assistant Professor, Department of Computer Science, Dr. S.N.S. Rajlakshmi College of Arts and Science, Coimbatore. So in this video, we are going to learn about state transition diagram and state transition table. So coming to the state transition diagram. So already we have seen what is transition, moving from one state to another. So it is a graphical representation of transition of the states by getting the input. So a transition diagram or state transition diagram is a directed graph which can be constructed as follows. So it is nothing but a directed graph. So here there is a node for each state in Q which is represented by circle. So you have to denote by the circle, and there is a directed edge from node Q to node P. Okay, and the transition is represented as del Q of A is equal to P. And in the start state, there is an arrow with no source, and accepting states or final states are indicated by a double circle. So we will see the diagrammatic representation in the next slide. So here the notations are: the circle represents the state and the arrow mark represents the transition from one state to another, and you can see the representation of the start state. Okay, and then we have final states and the indications are given here. Okay, so usually we will be denoting an arrow with the circle for the start state and double arrow for the final state. So these are the notations we are going to use in our transition diagram. So next come the transition table. As the name denoted, the transition table is nothing but a table which shows by getting an input what happens, what transition happens. So a transition table is represented by following things. So what is the first one? Columns correspond to the input symbols, rows correspond to the states. So what does the column represent? Input symbols, and rows are the states, and entries correspond to the next state. So by getting the input symbol where it is passing, so what is the next state? So the start state is denoted by an arrow with no source, and the accept state is denoted by a star. So what is this accepted state? That is nothing but the final state. So now we have an example here. So this is the state transition diagram. Here we have this start that is Q0 is the initial state. So by getting 0, it transits to the same state. It is not moving to the another state, and by getting 1 as an input, it is moving to the next state Q1. Again in Q1 there is a self loop where it is getting 1 and it is staying in the same state, and next by getting 0 it is going to the state Q2. You can see the symbol of double circle which represents the final state. There also you have got a self loop, that is by getting 0 and 1 it stays in the same state. Next one is your transition table. So it is in the format of the table where you have rows and columns. And what does this row represent and what does this column represent? So columns represent what? The input symbols, and row represents what? The states. So here we have got 3 column names. One is the present state, next is next state for getting in for input 0, and next state for input 1. So here we have got 3 states, Q0, Q1 and Q2, where Q0 is the start state, that is the initial state, and Q2 is the final state. And we have used 2 symbols in your alphabet, that is 0 and 1. So by getting an 0, 1, what happens to the states? So now first the starting state they have given in the table is Q0. So by this Q0, by getting 0, what happens? It stays in the same state Q0. That is what that represented here. And next one is what? Next state That is, by getting 1 as an input, what happens? It moves to the next state q1. That was represented in your first row. So by getting 0 as an input, what happens? It stays in the same state q0, and by getting 1 as an input, it moves to the next state q1. So what is in the second row? We have given the representation for the next state, that is q1. So this q1 getting this input as 0, what happens? Moves to the next state q2, and by getting 1, it stays in the same state q1. That is what given in the second row. Then in the third row, they have given star q2. What does the star represent? This is nothing but the final state. So in this q2, by getting 0, what happens? It stays in the same state q2. Again, by getting 1 as an input, it stays in the same state q2. That is what given in the third row. So all the representations of states are given here. So by getting the input, the transition happens. That has been depicted in this transition table. So this is what your transition diagram and table. So the transition of states given in the pictorial format is nothing but your state transition diagram, and if you are depicting in the form of a table, then you will call it as a state transition table. Okay, so this is your reference part, and in the next class, that is in the next video, we are going to discuss about regular expressions. Thank you.